Hello, myself, Ramkrishna. Basically, I discuss on the topic that is city creation. Basically, I discuss on another topic that is India account. Basically, we are discussing SBI account, Amazon account, and after 2 days, basically, that earthquake is going to happen in India. So that topic we are discussing this. Basically, we are discussing lava point, and in this lava point, basically, we have discussed lots of things. And the last topic which we have discussed was how basically the software company basically has created this 10 crore project and how basically they are going to do that. That basically we have already told that basically the business development officer basically they have designed the project and they only basically passes the project because they have the mapping of Microsoft, they have the mapping of PHP, they have the mapping of SAP, how basically the SAP are created and SAP basically contains so assume that it's app created from 1,000 cities. So the 1,000 cities were basically existing. So SAP is going to get the data project from that area only. Microsoft is created from 1,000 cities. So they are going to get project from that area only. PHP created from 1,000 cities. PHP basically mostly people say is that it's one DLL which is basically part of Microsoft or SAP basically. But mostly it might be SAP only or basically it might be Java also. But we can't basically confirm because it is one DLL basically. So it might be under Java or might be PHP or basically might be SAP basically. So this much is clear basically. Now basically business development officer have the entire mapping. So the 10 crore project basically which is going to create that would be according to the Microsoft equal to 1,000 cities. So Microsoft is created from 1,000 cities. So whatever the project basically is going to get that basically is from that 1,000 cities only. So when Microsoft basically was created, when Microsoft.dll basically you can say it was created, the entire mapping basically the boundary basically which was created, and this keeps on increasing. Basically. The creation of Microsoft gets keeps on increasing. So 1,000 cities, then basically it might go to 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. Like this basically keeps on increasing. Basically. SAP also basically it like that. And basically other option are it's fixed data basically. But you can't keep the fixed data because it's very dangerous. So mostly basically this keeps on plus minus basically. So Microsoft basically corporation created from 1,000 cities. Microsoft corporation basically have tie up with the few companies. So from this 10 crore basically, Microsoft also basically Microsoft also basically given some project to certain level of companies. So Microsoft corporation basically is connected with these 10 crore companies. 10 crore projects basically. Like SAP is connected, PHP is connected. Like this business development officer basically know that basically this is the 1,000 cities and this is the budget of each and every customer. So according to that only basically the projects are allocated to. They basically directly don't allocate the project basically to, for example, this company basically started. So they basically allocates. That is basically AI tool basically you can say, which allocates automatically according to the budget of the customer basically. When basically they do the business development stuff basically that time basically they say that basically yes basically the AI tool basically which we have created that was correct basically. So the customer basically got, then basically the projects are basically given to the business development officer basically creates the projects, then basically it's given to the companies basically. So lots of people says that basically the companies basically the companies basically they are not connected with the clients. The business development officers they are connected with the clients. Even basically big company also basically they basically never connects with the clients. So why that might be? Reason is Microsoft equal to Microsoft Energy. Microsoft Energy basically converts into Microsoft blood cells. So lots of people says that once anything basically happens to the blood cells, it's very difficult to revert it. Basically. So that's why lots of company basically never connects with the client directly. That are the business development officer only. They only allocates. They only become. They basically have one team basically, and they basically connects. So if this that company basically try to connect to the customer basically, that's very difficult to connect basically. That's very difficult to connect. But mostly basically connects and not connect. For example, I will take one example. Small customer basically they directly connect, but big customer basically they never connects directly with you. For example, there is one CRM, there is one car showroom. Car showroom group told that basically we want to develop one CRM project. So when basically the car showroom was open, that time only the software company basically done the proposal. Many software company might have done the proposal, right? So he might be accepting what basically. If it's a international level brand product basically, then they might be accepting some little bit costly product basically. So that is the company basically. So like this basically they allocates the projects. So AI tool basically has already allocated that he is going to do this project in .NET, PHP, whatever thing basically. But this gets confirmed when basically when the software company basically gives the software company basically gets the gives the proposal and the showroom basically they accept the CRM project basically. So like this basically the matching of the AI tool, that is the business development officer basically guesses, and the client basically has given the project to the software company basically. So there are many ways basically. There are many ways basically the business development business company basically owners they get certain level of software companies allocation. So whenever basically they gets open the showroom basically, they gets list of customers basically. That is basically one system basically you can say. They are basically the company creators basically you can say the, who actually creates the entire company. So they only basically gives the suggestion, and that suggestion only basically they gets the gives the project basically. Mostly it's like that. So one of the person told that software company basically software company basically directly basically connects to the customer company creators basically. So nowadays basically it's like that basically. Who basically do the give the first proposal, that also according to the budget of the customer, then basically they gets the project basically. So for that basically they directly have the contacts with the people basically who are actually creation in the companies basically. So in this basically what happens, they basically give some certain level of monies to the company creators, and they basically give the name of that software company only, and they basically say that this is the best software company. So that's commission margin basically, and the software company basically cover up that commission margin also, but in long term basically directly basically you can't say that this is the higher project money. So in maintenance basically they cover up everything basically. So that type of also stuff basically. So here basically that was a normal chain basically that of the software companies. So here basically the thing was 10 crore is the project which is going to be happen. That is basically the future creation basically are dumped into the lava data. Lava data basically are created and basically dumped into the Mumbai land area. Here basically I have taken the area of Mumbai land. That data basically is going to be created by the going to be accessed by the power company in future in future basically, not just now basically. Then basically they know that basically 10 crore project is going to be created because the lava basically has dumped into that level that 10 crore project basically gets creates. 10 crore project gets creates. So then basically one of the person told that when the lava project basically was dumped in, when the lava was dumped into the land basically by the lava groups, that is the 10 crore projects, that time basically they have settled that 10 crore, 100 crore will be the child which is going to get birth, and the child birth basically which is going to happen, they would be this type of child. So birth basically when it's going to happen, that time the child will be like this, and that child basically gets allocates automatically according to the behavior of the husband and wife basically. Husband, if husband and wife basically are like this, then they are going to get this type of child. So that basically is allocated inside the lava data only. So this type of this basically you can say it's a AI tool basically, which is created long before basically by the environment group basically. And this basically if you study the data basically, then you will easily able to know that basically everything basically has created like this only. So when the currently basically for example I got birth, so I got birth like this only basically. For example, for example, there are around my generation basically there are around more than I think assume that's 30 40 crore people basically are of according to my generation basically, according to my age. So they all basically got birth according to that way only. That is the behavior of the father and mother basically. According to that the data got allocated, and this basically was when it was created, when the project basically was created long before by the set of groups basically. That time basically they allocated the lava data. So that was basically that time. Nowadays basically it's a advanced level. So they basically creates the lava. In lava basically they have dumped that this type of child will be going to produce after certain future basically. In future basically they are going to get 100 crore child. 100 crore child will be like this. They are going to connect to this whole ideas are basically connected according to the task which basically the child do. So this everything basically are dumped into the lava. So you can just imagine basically the depthness level of the creation basically. So one person told that, for example, computer creation basically is one idea which was dumped long before. So whatever the power supply chain basically, which is which is connected, that would be according to that way only, or basically what basically. So I will take one example. Uh, Assume that the computer idea basically was dumped long before. So when lava basically was created that time basically, so computer idea is going to connect to this child that basically they have already mapped. This child basically is going to get which kind of power supply. That was also set basically into the lava data. So when basically the power supply company is going to take the data, so when the exact combination basically data he takes, that time basically the child basically gets the computer idea in his brain. He basically started thinking the computer idea. So one of the person told that, so this basically is one chain basically you can say. For example, child basically is one chain, then the power data is basically one chain, then the lava data is one chain, and the ideas basically are chain. That is the computer data basically. So one of the person told that, see the chain basically up to what level things are basically connected. See the chain basically up to what level the things are basically connected. And this everything basically is done basically. That is the main thing basically. So one of the person told that, when the lava basically was created by the project basically, set of project basically, currently basically 110 crore project basically you are creating. So that time only basically they have mapped. That is how basically, for example, Microsoft is corporation basically, they basically have CRM project. They have CRM project. So Microsoft is basically created from how many cities? Thousand cities. That is basically created from how many cities? Thousand cities. So Microsoft basically have got the information that they are basically have around 1 crore project. So Microsoft Corporation basically when it was created basically when the Microsoft basically was created, that time basically each and every mapping basically was done. So 100 crore child basically when gets creates basically in this child basically Microsoft has done some mapping basically that this would be our this type of child basically will be our also basically. So from 100 crore assume that basically Microsoft from Microsoft project basically they have dumped around 1 crore child. So 1 crore child will be the Microsoft corporation property. That basically is the future creation basically. That is the future creation basically you can say. That is the future creation. So when in future basically when that particular child basically when basically I will take one example. Assume that basically Microsoft has dumped 1 crore child. So when this 1 crore child will get activate, so they have dumped a certain level of conditions basically inside the lava through the Microsoft 1 crore projects. Through 1 crore projects basically, they have dumped a certain level of data basically. If this kind of condition will get satisfied, that time basically the birth is going to happen. So that child basically, that basically depends upon what that child is going to do what basically. So assume that basically when that child basically allocated to these all ideas, the child basically is allocated to these all ideas. So child is going to get birth, they are going to connect to this whole certificate, and after that certificate basically he is going to get to sorry the he is going to connect to certain level of ideas, and after ideas basically he is going to connect to creation basically, and he created computer basically. So this was allocated when basically this was allocated when basically the computer sorry when the lava basically was dumped long before basically. That time basically they have allocated that this will be the child basically, this is the condition of child basically. Whenever the whenever this whole condition basically will get satisfied, whenever basically this whole condition will get satisfied, that time basically the child energy basically is going to attract to that mother and father data, and that time basically that child is going to get birth basically, and he is going to create what basically, he is going to create computer basically. So up to this level basically data government have basically. So reason this 10 crore project basically they are creating na basically 10 crore project basically. So up to this level basically depthness government is thinking basically. Up to this level basically the data basically are thinking basically. And that condition basically are what basically, that condition basically are blood groups, A blood group, B blood group, C blood groups, A blood group, this that each and every blood group basically are dumped as a condition basically. When basically for example Microsoft basically told that basically 1 crore basically is the child which basically we are going to get the birth, we are going to give the birth. Like this basically they created projects. They basically told that basically we have the 1 crore data. We told that basically Microsoft basically corporation created certain level of projects basically, and that project basically count as if that basically that is 1 crore project. So 1 crore project basically is going to create what basically, they are going to create the child data. They are going to create what? Child data. And that child data would be what? That child data would be what? According to the blood groups data. So the blood group, because nowadays basically the trend is basically what? That is of blood group. So according to the blood group, basically the data are dumped into the lava data, sorry, into the software, and according to the software, the energies are dumped into the lava form, and that basically keeps on processing. And whenever basically the Microsoft group basically has told that basically whenever basically this type of blood group basically groups do the romantic moods, that time basically, so that means the Microsoft know that basically this type of blood basically are going to produce in future basically. So whenever basically this type of blood group basically, so this type of blood groups are basically the copyright of Microsoft. So whenever this type of blood group basically are going to do romantic scenes, romantic moods basically whatever. So that basically data of the power supply basically is going to attract to certain level of groups data. So that power supply, if basically one of the person told that what is time machine basically, the time machine is this only basically. They basically have the data and they basically sends the data to the environment, and in environment basically Microsoft has set done the setting that basically if this type of blood group basically is going to do the romantic moods basically, that time basically this all basically birth basically is going to happen. That is the 1 crore which was dumped inside long before basically. So like this basically the 1 crore child gets birth. So that depends upon what basically, that depends upon the condition. So you should know the condition basically. You should know the condition. For example, when the computer person basically who invented the computer, he basically how he only got the invention idea basically. There might be some reason, na, basically. There might be some reason. Without basically reason, basically nothing happens basically. So there might be something basically inside his body basically. So what was that basically? That was the conditions basically. And conditions what basically? Human body basically, human body basically attracts what basically? On the base of blood groups only basically it, because human body have only one power, that is blood groups and the body parts basically. So on the base of that blood group basically, which was settled long before that, when this blood group basically is child basically is going to get birth, that time this type basically that this computer basically invention idea basically is going to dump to that particular person. So here basically Microsoft basically has what done? Microsoft has told that basically these all are our the conditions, these all are the blood groups data, they are basically creating this data. So blood group basically after certain time basically after certain generation basically, they Microsoft basically know that basically this would be the blood groups data. And whenever these blood groups data, so this blood groups data they have created basically, they have created their own blood group data. That is a 1 crore child basically which is going to get birth. So for that birth basically they have created this type of all data. So whenever basically, so they know that basically this generation basically is going to have this kind of blood group. So whenever basically this all blood group basically is going to do the attraction mode basically, that time this all data basically is going to attract and the child is going to happen. So just imagine basically up to what critical level basically task the software companies are doing, and they have done this basically everything. It's not like that basically everything basically happens automatically. So Microsoft know that. Microsoft knows. Microsoft team basically. That is Microsoft project basically how many companies basically is having. Accenture is having, Capgemini is having, TCS is having, Patni is having, eClerx is having. So these all company group basically, they basically don't know that they are creating child. But Microsoft knows that he is actually collecting the blood groups data, which is going to attract one day, which is going to attract one day to this all generation which exists, and which exists, and his their blood group basically is going to, their blood data basically is going to become like this. So you can just see the mapping basically Microsoft corporation has done basically in the form of lava. So for another person to the how basically they sense the power supply. That is also a question. And that comes to what? Time basically. That this is the time basically when because that basically 1 crore basically it basically can't attract in one day basically. 1 crore basically people basically are not going to get birth basically in one day basically. So Microsoft basically might have done some plan basically. So first basically he's going to check each and everything basically. But that checking basically he might have done long before basically. How? Because nowadays lava data are also created. Lava data are also created. For example, that person, that girl basically which is going there, she is lava of Microsoft. So you can just imagine basically the 1 crore project basically which was created. So he created few ladies. He basically selected few ladies and told that basically few lava data basically we are going to dump into your body in the form of energy. They basically ask, huh, basically they basically don't forcefully do. They basically ask. Then basically they told that they basically say that these all are the data basically which is going to dump in your body, and according to that basically we will check that basically the child process basically happens or not. So that happens in some blood cells basically. That happens in the blood cells basically, and then basically after certain data basically when basically they feels that basically the blood cells basically has generated, that is the child blood cells, then basically they say that now basically the because otherwise it will not happen. When the lava will get generate, that time basically lots of testing basically they have to do, and the long process basically has happened, and then basically we'll do the testing basically up to what level things are basically going to connect. So they basically do the testing here only. They creates lava ladies. In lava ladies basically they know that basically 1 crore project basically energies are there, and like this basically the data gets connects. So you can just imagine up to what level the energies are connected. And it's not so easy to create one Microsoft 1 crore child. And like this basically they creates everything basically. So one of the person told this everything basically you will not get in the books basically. This everything only basically you get in Sunil Nayar's video. Even basically the Microsoft Corporation basically will watch this video in future basically. In future basically they basically don't have time. But they if they watch this video basically, they will say that yes basically we know that basically this, but we have not tested. But from the this data basically we can, but they might have without testing basically they don't implement anything. So this lava lady basically also they might have created basically. They might have created. They might have created. So one of the person told that like this basically the system gets creates of the childbirth basically. So Microsoft project basically from 1 crore project actually what they are creating. They are creating a certain level of blood data, and that blood data is going to connect to they are basically going to connect to certain level of data in future. So whatever blood group basically they are creating, the energies basically they are creating, that energy is going to dump to certain level of peoples in future, and this is the AI, dangerous AI basically. I'm telling basically, this is the most dangerous AI. So they have created that. They have told that basically these all are the blood group data which we are creating. That is the energy basically. You basically can't create the blood data in the environment. You have to create the energy only. After that, basically it converts into the blood when basically it goes to the human body. So they told that basically Microsoft is creating the blood data from the 1 crore project, and they have told that basically these all are the conditions, and from this condition basically certain level of 1 crore people basically are going to 1 crore people basically are going to connect basically from this energy, and the people basically who are going to connect, that basically are dumped into the conditions basically, that these all people basically are going to connect. So they connected, Then basically after the connection, connected means the Microsoft energy will connect. How basically the power data will going to send that time basically it's going to connect. And when basically it's going to connect, it's a time period basically. They have kept the time scheduling basically that this time batch processing basically is there now basically in data warehousing basically after this basically this process will start, this process is done, then basically that process will start. So that's way basically the batch processing happens and the 1 crore child basically gets birth. So this was the future basically of Microsoft. So like same way basically the 100 crore child is going to get birth. Same project basically the Microsoft corporation has done. Same way the software company project basically is done. Same way basically other companies also they creates the data. So this data basically who have the authority? That is World Health Organization only have the. No, Microsoft basically don't have the authority to access the blood groups, blood cells. They only can connect to health organization and they can request basically this type of data basically we required. So is it basically possible to give, that means condition basically. We want this type of conditions so that this kind of people basically can attract to this kind of conditions. That is a 1 crore conditions basically. Sorry, 1 crore birth is going to happen. So 1 crore condition, 1 crore people basically is going to attract to this particular child. So 1 crore people basically condition is required. So that condition basically they are going to ask to the World Health Organization. If they feels that basically this condition is okay, because they also have the certain level of conditions data available in future. So they have to also be have to be ready that basically Microsoft Corporation is going to give this type of conditions. So according to that, basically we have to be ready. Why? Because he also gets the certain level of data's condition. So then basically one of the person told that like this basically they connected to the child and then the birth will happen. So you can just imagine basically how the process is. How the process is. So you can just able to imagine basically what the process is. So in next video basically this most of topic basically we have covered. And this way basically the Microsoft Corporation will get the achievement. Not only Microsoft, 1 lakh project basically which is ongoing in the 1 lakh companies basically are doing the project in Mumbai basically. They are going to achieve. And this way only basically you can create basically. Because in when basically the lava is created, that time basically you are not going to check everything basically. So checking process basically you have to do here only basically. Checking process. Otherwise, basically, the universe group will say that basically which kind of generation I have created. They will basically in future basically they will say that basically which kind of generation basically I have created. So they should say that basically yeah basically that was the good generation which we have created from universe. They should say this word basically that I have created good generation. That basically happens through this all testing basically, that I have already listed basically. So in next video, basically, we are going to see a little bit more about the lava creations and the future creations.